Welcome back to Basin Motorsports for another day here in the garage. Now, if you're like me, you have an older compressor and you run it pretty hard. Well, invariably, parts are going to wear out, and unfortunately, the pressure tube on mine actually broke. So the copper tube in here is what goes from the pump down into the tank, and it has split. So today I'm going to show you how to replace your copper or aluminum compressor tube for the pressure down under the cover. Now, to get started, what I need to do is get this cover off. There is a screw at the backside and a screw under the valve up here. So where your pressure valve comes out, where your hose connects to, you'll want to make sure your hose is disconnected there. Take the Phillips screw out there, take the Phillips screw out here, and then your cover is going to come right off. So now, as you can see, my pressure tube has cracked. It is now in two pieces. So I need to be able to take this off in order to get a new piece put on. Now, Campbell Hausfeld does have a replacement kit available. It's basically one part number for multiple compressors. So the tube itself in the kit comes with instructions, which is the paper, the two gaskets you need, and the tube is going to be extra long, so you're going to have to cut it down. So the first thing we need to do is get the instructions out, and we're going to follow these line by line, go through and replace this following the instructions, and then we're going to give it a test fire. Alright, so following the instructions, the first thing we're going to do is make sure it's disconnected for the wall and the power switch is turned off. So this is going to be off, and I'm far enough away from an electrical outlet that is not connected, so we're in good shape. Now, it does say to depressurize the tube itself or the tank itself. So if you have any pressure in there, you can go through and pull up your valve here, or you can open your valve on the bottom of the tank. Now, the one on the bottom of the tank, if you have a line that doesn't take the condensation out, if you open the drain on the bottom, it will actually drain out the water from your compressor tank. So that's what I'm going to do because I am behind on maintenance on getting water out of the tank. So that's exactly what I'm going to do before I go to the next step. All right, so step 2 in the process to remove this cover if you already haven't. So again, it's a screw in the back, a screw in the front. You're going to pop it up. Now remember, it's connected all the way around with these little tabs. So you're going to push these tabs in, pop it up. If there's no hose on, slide it off the front. Step 3 is going to be loosening these connections from the pressure exhaust tube. And you're going to take them loose, but not off. All right, next you're going to take off your mounting bracket that holds your motor to your compressor base. Now, this screw right here is going to be a 10mm socket. And once you have this taken off, you can take this bracket loose, take it off the compressor completely, and then you're going to come over to the side one, and this is also going to be a 10mm. You know, take this out, and that way your motor then can completely move about the cabin freely. All right, at this point, you still have one fastener holding on your motor. So all you want it to do is to be able to move freely. You don't want it to be able to pick up in that because you don't need it. So it's still connected. That just gives it a little bit of movement so that I can get these back off. So now you can take these completely off, take your nuts off. There's one, and there's two. So again, there's my two pieces that came off from my pressure tube. Okay, so now at this point, I need to start measuring and getting prepared to measure my tube length. So one thing I need to do is basically get these nuts off of these tubes so that I can get a proper length all the way around and up into. So once you get these off there, the gaskets that are already on there are going to make them difficult for the nuts themselves to come off the tubes. So you're just going to kind of have to wiggle them around, get the gaskets to kind of break apart, and then you're going to take them off of the tubes themselves so that I can actually tape this back together to get an approximate length of the new tube versus the old, so I can cut the new one. All right, so here's the old piece that I've just used a piece of tape to kind of get in shape here. The ends are taken off, and then once you take off the nuts themselves, you'll find that you'll want to take out all of the old gaskets. So you can see that nothing is in there. Now I just picked those out with my fingernails, so those will come out nice and easy. The new one, the new piece itself, is going to have 2 new gaskets on it. So go ahead and take those off. They're just these little red pieces. Just take them off, set them aside in a safe place. You won't need them until the next step. Now, if you'll notice on the old one versus the new one, you can see that on the one side it's about the same size, and you want to line it up around the curve itself. And you can see that they're about the same on the end, but on the other side that you can see that the old one is shorter than the new one. So you want to use a tubing cutter rather than a hacksaw. Use a tubing cutter, and you want to make this slightly longer. So I'm going to get my tubing cutter and I'm going to cut this just about 1/8 of an inch longer that way. Now the instructions say to go a little longer than shorter, and if you have to cut it multiple times, kind of sneak up on the length once you test fit it to make sure it's going to fit. Remember, go longer, measure it once, go a little longer if you need to, cut it, and then come back to it again. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this now to the length, and we're going to test fit it to the compressor to see how it fits. Once you have everything cut the length that you need, you can then put your nuts on each, then slide your washers on, and then you're going to take this and put it onto your compressor, and you're going to tighten the nuts just hand tight. Okay, next you're going to install your strap on your base plate. Remember, it goes in this tab on the back, and then you can install your fastener here. Now the instructions recommend on both of these that you put in some blue Loctite, which is removable Loctite. So you can do that to make sure your fasteners stay secure, but will not come back out, and they will come out later on if you use a socket wrench. Otherwise they won't back themselves out as the compressor vibrates. Alright, so we're going to hit those with a torque wrench for 140 inch-pounds, and then we're going to tighten down our nuts on our connections here for the tube. And it says to tighten these down until the red gasket starts to protrude out the top end. Alright, so the last step in the process is to put the cover back on. Now before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and plug it in, turn it on, and I'm going to let it get up to about 50 pounds just to make sure that there are no leaks from these connections and that everything is secure in here. Now if you're going to run it with the cover off, you can do that, and I may just set the cover back on, but I'm going to test fire it before I put the final screws in, make sure everything's good. So let's go ahead and just set the cover back on, make sure that nothing's in there, and then we're going to plug it in, make sure it starts up, get it up to about 50 psi, and see how it does. Okay, so there's the finished product. Now everything is tight. You can see that the compressor is running, about 60 psi or so. So nice and tight. No leaks on that, so we're in good shape there. And that completes the installation. Now remember, running this copper tube is going to get real hot, so do not burn your fingers on it when you check for air leaks there. But you can just kind of hold your hand over it, just similar to this. You can also listen to see if there's any leaks in that, but we're in good shape there. So I'm going to put the cover back on, and that is it. So the installation of that is pretty easy. Honestly, the longest part of this whole thing is cutting that exhaust pressure tube just to the length. Now getting it right, I also make it a couple extra bends, which not too big of a deal, but just take your time with it. Cut it to length, test fit it again, make sure it all works before you start tightening down your compression fittings and that. Otherwise, you're going to be in good shape. Now, I know parts for these the Campbell Hausfeld compressors are getting a lot harder to find. So if you can't find stuff via eBay or Google or anything else, just keep checking. Somebody has these parts out there. Just keep looking. You'll find them. And from that, Basin Motorsports, we'll see you next time, and keep compressing.